All right, so we are, this is week 6 of the Messiah Masculinity series. Here's the deal. This week is the Beatitudes. So we've been going through the Beatitudes to kind of unpack what it means to be a godly man. And the Beatitudes are the attributes of the citizens of heaven. So this is it's for everybody, but we're applying it to the dudes specifically because, there's not a whole lot of, good edifying male representation or advice in the world, right? Anybody watch TV? Like every TV show, the dad is the dumbest dude on the show. Especially if it's a comedy, the dad is straight up stupid. And if it's not a comedy, then the dads are evil or whatever, and like, that's kind of where our culture's at. Is like, we don't like male things, But then what happens is the ones that rise up are the ones that are, the ones that get popular are either the ones that are not manly at all, which is not great, or they're the ones that are, they are the definition of toxic masculinity, because it's not like that's not a thing. It's just that the problem's not the masculinity part, it's the toxicity part. And in the church, we don't call it toxic, we just call it sinful. And so what we're doing is trying to figure out, like, what's the right way to do this, And so today, this one's interesting. It's hard because it's muddy. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Then why is it muddy? Well, honestly, we do a bad job of talking about mercy in the church, because what we do is we conflate it with grace. And it's not that they're not related, it's just that they're not the same thing. And it's an important distinction, because there's a progression that we see in Scripture, and mercy, it comes before grace. So what we have is, you have God's love. The story starts with God's love. He's let us make them in our image, and he saw what he made, and he said it was good. And like, if you've ever held a little baby that's yours, especially guys, like if it's yours, if it's not yours and you're like, oh, it's so perfect. I mean, I don't know, maybe. I never held anybody else's baby and been like, oh, it's so perfect. I just be like, oh, cute. Okay, take it back. But mine, there's a picture. I have pictures of each one of my girls when we're in the hospital, that are like some of my favorite pictures. And it's hilarious because some people think babies are cute. I think babies are funky looking, But I love them because it's just there are these moments in time that I'll never get back. And they're precious and they're great, And if you've ever had that, it's good. Like that, God's saying it was good, like that's love, right? But then here's the problem. Sin enters, and there's a need for justice, because sin is a transgression against God. And you have to understand, we have a problem with the idea. I think a lot of times there's this dissonance that like, well, why would God need to punish us? Why can't he just let us off the hook? And in that way, we tend to be petulant 12-year-olds. It's like, it's not that big a deal, Dad. Just, and our faith can kind of be that way. But there is a need for justice, because God is holy. And if you sin against him, then justice has to be satisfied. Why? Because love without justice is chaos. And it's no longer love. Like, that's the problem. Like, love without justice is chaos, and it's no longer love. We see that in our culture right now today. Like, this is what we see happening all the time. Everybody's screaming love at the top of their lungs, but nobody wants to pay the price of justice or enforce the price of justice. And so what happens? Well, love turns into licentiousness, which turns into chaos, which turns into violence. Love without justice lacks order. And where there is no order, there is no love. And so there's a need for justice. There's a need for justice because justice upholds the purity and the strength and the holiness of love. You know, love isn't just affection or desire. It's more than that. And so there's a need for justice. Now, this need for justice is fulfilled in the Old Testament by sacrifices. But the sacrifices don't hold because they don't heal your soul, and they still keep you distant from God. So there's a bigger need for justice. And so then Jesus comes about, and Jesus fulfills God's need for justice because he's the perfect man, and in being the perfect man, he can take on the weight of sin for all time because he never sinned. And since he never sinned, this is the perfect sacrifice that can fulfill the need for justice. That's why the cross. The cross is an act of mercy. Justice is getting what I deserve. Mercy is not getting what I deserve. The resurrection is an act of grace. Grace is getting more than I deserve. So what we have is love that leads to a need for justice. Justice, because we cannot fulfill what is required of it without losing our souls, it requires a need for mercy. Mercy then leads to forgiveness, and forgiveness leads to grace. That's the progression. And so mercy is huge because it's dead in the middle. Mercy is the doorway to grace. And so that's the thing. When we conflate the two, what we do is we undermine this idea that no, there is a need for punishment, and that need was filled on behalf of me and then withheld from me. The punishment was withheld from me in the interest of love. It's a big deal. Now, here's the thing. The beatitude is scary. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. This goes along with a handful of other statements that Jesus makes. In the Lord's Prayer, he says, let us forgive those who trespass against, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And then there's another one where that everybody quotes to throw your spirituality back in your face. Judge not, lest you be judged. Well, so what this is, they're all related. Mercy, forgiveness, judgment. The amount of mercy that you give sounds like it's an exchange. Will be the amount of mercy you're given. It sounds like it's an exchange. Now, I don't know. I'm not God. But if God's going to juxtapose the amount of mercy I give to the amount of mercy he's going to give to me, even though he's awesome and holy and loving and gracious and I trust him, I think I probably ought to give as much as I can give. Right? Like, I'm not telling you that God's up in heaven going, all right, there's one, you get one. There's two, you get two. I don't know, I'm not him. I'm just saying, he said, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. I'm just telling you, he said, the measure you use will be used against you. I'm just telling you that it says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. There is an exchange that happens. Maybe it's one of those awesome exchanges where it's like you're a kid with an allowance, and you take out the trash and you get $5. Taking out the trash was not worth $5. And apparently your parents are rich, but like maybe it's like that. Maybe it's that good. Maybe God in his love and his grace, like I've heard stories of parents who are like, you save all the money for your car. And then they double it once the kid's able to buy a car. And now all of a sudden the kid's driving, well, in my high school, it was Acuras. Pick your high school. Right? Like maybe it's that, maybe it's that. All I know is that in some measure, God's measure will match mine. So we should walk in this carefully. But here's the other thing. We in our culture, we have this problem with mercy because we don't It's not a thing. We've thrown out justice. We've thrown out justice as a goal at all. When people scream for justice, but what they really mean is revenge. Because justice is a process and justice is just. And so we don't seek it. We don't care about it. So then what happens is mercy is now undermined for us. And you either have the people who stand on the principle and they do claim justice, but they have no mercy. And those people are vengeful. And then you have the people who don't really get the idea of it at all. And mercy is undermined because they don't uphold any standard. There's no standard. It's just like, live and let live, dude. And so mercy is hard to come by because you have to, when you apply mercy, you withhold the punishment in the interest of love without undermining the standard. You see, that's what God did. He gave us mercy. But the cross, in the cross, he still got justice. That's a hard needle to thread. That's a hard needle to thread. That's a tough one. And here's the thing. I think a lot of times when you talk about mercy, it gets seen as a weak trait. It gets seen as a feely thing. You think about mercy and you think about tears and hugs. And if the cross is the example of mercy, it takes a lot of strength to actually be merciful. It takes a lot of courage to actually be merciful. So what we're going to do is we're going to use John chapter 4. This is the story of Jesus and the woman at the well. We're going to use this story to unpack the way that Jesus threads the needle to get to mercy for this lady. And look, at the end of the day, here's what this is going to come down to. You are going to have to figure out how to apply it yourself. Because like what I want to do when I preach a sermon is I want to give you a 3-step process and boom, ipso facto, here we are, you did it, good job. That's what I want because that's what I want. I'm in the same boat as you. When I pray, I'm like, God, show me exactly what to do. And that's it. But this is not that simple because listen, there are times that justice is still required. We talk about the cross, but let's not forget, there is a judgment seat. And if you don't follow Jesus, well, justice is required. You didn't accept his mercy or his grace, right? And so there are times in your life that justice is still required. How do we unpack that? How do we do that? Because we don't want to be stingy with the mercy we give, because we don't want God to be stingy with us. But at the same time, we don't want to just give permission to everything because then we're sinful people. So what does it look like? John chapter 4. Jesus knew the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John. Though Jesus himself didn't baptize them, his disciples did. So he left Judea and returned to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" Jesus replied, "If only you knew the gift that God has for you and who you're speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. But sir, don't you have a rope or a bucket? You don't have a rope or a bucket, and this is a very deep well. Where would you get this living water? And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed?" Jesus replied, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. Please, sir, the woman said, give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here to get water. Go and get your husband, Jesus told her. I don't have a husband, the woman replied. She probably said just like that. I squeaked. All right. You're right. You don't have a husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man you're living with now. You certainly spoke the truth. Sir, the woman said, you must be a prophet. So tell me, why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place of worship, while we Samaritans claim it's here at Mount Gerizim, where our ancestors worshiped? Jesus replied, believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him. For salvation comes through the Jews, but the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit, so those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Jesus told her, I am the Messiah. So we're going to stop there. I'll give you the rest of the story this way. The disciples show back up, and they're like, are you hungry? And Jesus is like, you know nothing of the food I have. And they're like, what? And then the woman goes back into town, right? And she starts telling everybody about Jesus. Come see this man. He told me everything I ever did. This is the weirdest story. Okay, so when we read the Bible, a lot of times what happens is like you read it and you read it, well, like I just did. You read it flat. You know what I mean? The tone, and look, sometimes it's not good to inject tone because you're injecting yourself. Like, fair enough. But this story in particular, I've read it this way, like my whole life. I just read it and it's like, okay, the facts, we're going to get the facts, right? And then, so I was sitting at the tattoo shop this spring, and I'm stuck there for like 8 hours, just being tortured. And the guy who does my tattoos, he's a Christian, and he's like, there was nobody else in the shop. He's like, we're watching The Chosen today, and I'm like, all right, cool, right? Now, I've watched a couple episodes of the show, but I'm just gonna be honest, I haven't done the best job of like being up to date with it. I don't know if that makes me a bad Christian nowadays or what, but here's why. I've read the Bible my whole life, and so the storyline's not gonna surprise me. And like when I watch TV, I wanna be entertained, Like if you ask me what's a good movie, I need explosions, I need excitement, and I need a plot line that I don't have to pay attention to. And I want the good guy to win. That's me. Like if it were me, every Expendables movie would have gotten an Oscar. You understand? Like that's me, okay? And I understand that makes me just a total, meathead idiot, but that just is what it is. So he's like, we're watching The Chosen. I'm like, all right, cool. We get through a whole season sitting there. And this was one of the episodes. And they dramatize it, right? So like, I'm not saying you should watch The Chosen instead of reading your Bible. How about that? Nobody's gonna attack me after church, right? And the Bible doesn't say that Matthew is autistic. It doesn't, okay? So like, that's fine. They wouldn't have even known. But still, this story in particular was brought to life by the episode because I realized, holy crap, that's an argument. They're arguing. And that's where this sermon came from, because Jesus is not just like, when I imagined it, what I imagined is Jesus is a good evangelist, and he shows up and he sees this lady and he goes, you know what? I'm gonna tell him about me. I'm gonna tell her about me, because that's what you do, And so he gets out his little tract and he's like, all right, I'll pull her in with an engaging question. Can I have some water? Right? And that's the way I unpacked it. Like this was the end. He just says, okay, unpack the story the way it goes. Could I please have some water? Why are you, a Jewish man, talking to me, a Samaritan woman? Well, that's a little not nice. And she didn't answer the question, right? And the story tells us that he's visibly tired. He's weary from the journey. They probably got up real early so they didn't have to walk all day in the hot sun. It's noontime. He's tired. He wants some water. Now, the other thing it tells us is that she's getting water at noon. You would not get water at noon if you didn't have to. So we know that this lady's a little jaded and she's been rejected by all of the lady friends that would go get the water in the morning. And Jesus catches some of it, you know? And then he responds to her. She said, "Why are you asking me for a drink? If you only knew the gift that God has for you and who you're speaking to, you would ask me and I'd give you living water." And then she says, this is the part where you're like doing the strongly worded email to customer service, you know? She says, "You don't even have a rope or a bucket." Yeah, that's why I asked you for water. I couldn't get it myself. You don't even have a rope or a bucket. And the well's very deep. Yes, I'm aware. That's why I needed water. And besides, do you think you're greater than Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed? Jesus replies, "Anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life." Now, here's what's happening. She doesn't want to talk to Jesus, and Jesus keeps talking in riddles. This is like trying to argue with your wise grandfather. You know what I mean? Like, he ain't going to get mad. He's too tired to get mad. Mad left his mind a long time ago. He's just going to keep spitting proverbs at you, right? And so her response is this: "Please, sir, give me this water, and then I'll never be thirsty again." Okay, you understand, she doesn't believe him. Who are you to tell me I could have living water? You're not better than Jacob. So it's like, hey, okay, fine, give me this imaginary water. Or leave me alone. That was me, not the Bible. That's not in there, right? Go ahead and get your husband. Well, that took a turn. Well, I don't have a husband. No, you don't. You've had 5. And the guy you're living with now, he ain't your husband. You ain't lying. Now watch this. She turns again. "Sir, you must be a prophet." She deflects. And now she's trying to compliment him. "You must be a prophet. So tell me, why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place of worship, while we claim it's here?" And Jesus says, "Believe me, dear woman, a time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him. For salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming indeed, it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth." He's closing the gap between the two of them the whole time. Right? The woman said, "I know the Messiah is coming. The one who's called the Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." And then he said, "I am the Messiah." That's a secret that nobody knew. And he shared it with the lady that he wasn't supposed to interact with at all. And that her own people didn't even like her. You have to understand, culturally, like this whole conversation is an act of mercy. Because Jesus reveals himself to her, yes, but also because of the cultural context. This lady, Samaritans and Jews did not get along. And here's why. The Samaritans were the ones who were left behind in the exile. They were Hebrews who were left behind in the exile, and they intermarried with the Canaanites in the area. And so they've committed a couple of transgressions. Number one, they adopted other gods, and they stayed in that. And the ones that went away in the exile, they had to call back to God. And they had to, they like, when you have a friend, well, that's probably not a fair way to say it, but when you know somebody, and then you go through something hard with somebody else, and then you feel closer to that person than the person that you knew before. That was a dumb way to say that, but you get what I'm saying? Okay, here you go. There's this thing that happens, right? When you get married and you start a family, you have all of your best friends that you had. And then you have your wife. And then you get married and you start a family. And you go through hard things, like the first year of marriage, where you're ready to throw down over some peanut butter. She likes creamy, you like chunky, right? Now it's a fight. And then you go through some more hard things, and then you have a kid together. And now all of a sudden, all your best friends, well, they're not best anymore. They might be friends. But no, it's her, right? That's kind of what happened with the Jews that went into exile. They went through the hard thing together. They were removed from the holy place. You have to understand, Jerusalem was the place where you could worship. It's not like today where you like if I make you mad today, you go to another church down the road and you'll worship just fine. It's not like that. You had to worship in Jerusalem. That's the place of God. That's the home of God. That's the mountain of God. The Temple Mount is the holy mountain. That's the place. That's where he resides. That's the way they understand it. And so they're removed from his presence in a very real way, and they experience that plus all the other stuff together. And so they are the true Jews, and the Samaritans stay behind. They intermarry, and they don't go through all of that. And then they continue to worship God, but they don't do it in Jerusalem, and they start all these other traditions. And so they're traitors, and they're pagans. That's worse than just being a Canaanite. You used to be one of us and you chose not to be. And she's a woman who's promiscuous. This is not somebody that he should interact with. What he should do, you have to understand, you can't overlay your biases on top of this. What Jesus should do in this moment is refuse to even look at her. That's the right thing. And in speaking to her and working her to his place, he gives her dignity, and that's an act of mercy. So the first thing with Jesus is this: you have to be unoffendable. If you're gonna act in mercy, if you're gonna be an agent of mercy in the world, you have to be unoffendable. It's pretty hard to have mercy with anybody when you're mad. This is pretty intuitive, right? You know that you're not going to be merciful if you're angry, if you're offended all the time. But here's the problem. Everything in the world is pretty much made to offend you. And so this means that if you're going to be unoffendable, you have to pay attention to what you're taking in. Just unpack entertainment. Entertainment based on offense. Reality TV is huge, right? The characters are chosen because they're offensive, right? And the whole thing is based around offense. If you ever watched The Survivor, The Bachelor, what's the drama about? People being mad at other people, and somehow you get sucked into it. 90 Day Fiance, that was the one over COVID. My family all watched it together, and I'm ashamed. But these people all get offended. They're offended with their family because their family's we're concerned that you're trying to get married to somebody in 90 days. It's from a foreign country that you just met. Why are you mad at your family? Sounds like they love you. But anyway, you have to pay attention to what you take in. The news is designed to offend you. You do realize that the news channel you watch is the people who act offended at the things that offend you. That's all. They don't ever really tell you what they're for. They just tell you what they're mad about. And you're like, me too. I'm gonna keep watching this. Like that's the way it works. And like, I'm not making fun of you because I'm the same way. Like, I got the stuff I watch, I got the stuff I read, I got all of it. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that guy. And then somewhere, actually, honestly, this last week, I was like, man, I gotta stop. And it comes and goes, but this last week I gotta stop. Like, well, to be honest with you, what happened was, for the last month or so, my wife's been like, are you okay? All the time, she keeps asking me. And you know when somebody asks you that, even though you trust them and you love them and you know they're checking on you, you're like, I thought I was, right? I guess I'm not. And then I'll say something and she'll be like, react like I was just like super harsh. And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I don't know. And I just realized like I've been baseline angry for like a month. It's insidious because I thought I was fine. But you can't be merciful. You can't even be nice. Nice is cheap. And you can't even be nice if you're always offended. But in this sense, you have to be unoffendable. Like, love has to cut through the things that bother you. There's no way that Jesus should have stood for her speaking to him this way. If he, in this context, he would have, the other Jews, not Jesus, but other Jews would have seen themselves as better than this woman. And then known that she's here at noon, so she must be the worst of the worst. And when she said, like, why are you even talking to me? No, get me water right now. But that's not the way that Jesus works. She reacts that way, and he goes, man, if you just knew who you were talking to. It's the next one, be gentle. To be gentle. You want to know something? As a character trait of a man, gentleness is underrated. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that you should be quiet and weak. I think a lot of times that is the way that it gets portrayed, and they're just like, you're too gruff. Shut up and get in the corner. Make a stupid joke like on TV, And like that's not it. That's not gentleness. True gentleness is having the standard and knowing the standard and demanding the standard and doing it in a way that is not mean. In doing it in a way that brings people along. Doing it in a way that is loving. This is my grandpa, Papa J. He is the sweetest man on the planet. He became a pastor in his 60s. And he spent the last 20 years pastoring tiny little churches. And the man talks so slow. Robert, you've been drinking dirty water, boy? No, Papa, that's gross. Well, I can't see through you. Get out of the way of the TV. Okay, got it. Right? That was like my whole childhood, right? Because I just didn't pay attention, and I needed to be in front of you. And one time, my mama Debbie, I was wearing my hat backwards. And she, this is South. That's not what you do. And she would turn your hat around. No. Turn your hat around. No. And Papa goes, Debbie, leave him alone. And then I said, yeah, leave me alone. And he said, turn your hat around. He never raised his voice to me any other time in my life. I turned that hat around so fast. There was a standard. He didn't even have to turn. We were in the car. He didn't even have to turn and look at me. Didn't even move his head. There's a standard. You don't disrespect my wife. And he took his voice up one notch. Yes, sir. That's gentleness. That's strength. And Jesus speaks to her in a gentle way. If you only knew who you were talking to. I will give you living water. You have to be disciplined. You have to be disciplined in how you communicate. You have to be disciplined in how you communicate because you got to thread the needle. You have to uphold the standard and you have to withhold the punishment. That's what mercy is. And that means that you don't get to give permission to do wrong. But that also means, right, that you still have to figure out how to enforce what's right. And that's a needle you got to thread. And so the words you choose, you have to choose them carefully. Jesus, he says to her, go get your husband. And she goes, well, I don't have. Yeah, I know you don't have one. At no point though does he say it's okay. At no point does he like say this is not a problem. Like the way you've lived is not a problem. He just points her higher. He points her to a truth that will free her and make her whole. And so when you choose your words and you want to act in mercy, you want to be an agent of mercy for the people that God's given you, you have to choose your words carefully. And honestly, you have to choose your body language carefully because you can say kind things and move angrily. And just for what it's worth, if we're talking about being a dad, your kids watch what you do more than they hear what you say. If I must say 12 times a day, I don't want to repeat myself again. They don't care, but they watch what you do. The next one, you got to be direct. You got to be direct. This is an aspect of choosing your words carefully, of being disciplined in how you communicate. You have to be direct. Like you cannot sugarcoat the truth. You cannot sugarcoat the truth. You don't sugarcoat the truth. You just give them a soft place to land. Jesus says, go get your husband. She goes, I don't have one. He goes, you've had 5 and you're with somebody you're not even married to now. And then she goes, you must be a prophet. And then he goes, a time is coming when all of these separations that you're talking about, that you're worried about, you're trying to tell me that I think I'm better than you, and there's a time coming where God's going to redeem us all. Well, I know the Messiah is coming. I'm him. At no point does the truth get undermined, but he gives her a soft place to land. The last one is you have to be generous. The mercy, you have to be generous in the mercy all right. So this has been the toughest point of the sermon the whole weekend because I want to land it in the right place. Love requires justice. Love and justice together require mercy. Mercy leads to forgiveness. Forgiveness leads to grace. What she is discovering in this moment is that there is forgiveness for her. There's forgiveness for the things she's done. She met the Messiah. She met the fulfillment. She met the hope. And then she goes and tells everybody. And they come and listen to him speak. He's generous in his mercy. And being generous in mercy means you're also going to have to be generous with forgiveness. You cannot be a merciful person that doesn't let things go. That's not mercy, it's just a lie. And when you do that to people, you can lie to yourself. Here's the problem. If you can lie to, like, there's everything about Jesus here is true and she knows it, so she preaches his word. She tells people about him. Everything about Jesus is true, so she's motivated and she feels it and it's real. You can try to act in mercy. You can try to be merciful, but if you don't forgive, what will happen is people will know that it's not true. The problem here is people will know before you know if you're good at lying to yourself. Because a lot of times we're better at lying to ourselves than we are to other people. And so that means you have to approach the relationships in your life, you have to approach the people in your life with open hands and an open heart. That means, like, if you're actually, like, God's mercy is given freely to you, all you have to do is accept it and receive forgiveness. That's the ideal. That's the example. That's the name you take on when you call yourself a Christian. That means you have no right to withhold mercy and forgiveness from anyone who seeks it. You don't get to say, I'm going to get mine. You have to approach your relationships with open hands. Here's the thing. Lots of you probably get this with your kids, but if you don't practice it with your spouse, it doesn't matter because they're watching how you treat each other. And if every time you argue, it's all about crap that happened years and years ago, it's all about stuff that nobody let go, it's all about not being forgiven ever, they know, they hear. And so they'll believe that when you say it to them, it's not true. Not to mention, if you can't practice it with her, you think you're going to pull it off with your kids? Oh. You have to be generous. You have to be open-handed. You have to be open-hearted. That means you actually need to have a relationship with the Holy Spirit and allow him to guide you. Because here's what's true. It's hard to keep your heart open. It's not natural to be generous. It's not natural to be merciful. The natural thing is to protect yourself. But when you protect yourself from God, when you protect yourself from your spouse, when you protect yourself from your children, what does that leave you? Alone. So it's not just true spiritually. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. The more mercy you give to those around you, the more you'll receive. It's a virtuous cycle. You want your spiritual life to get better, be generous with mercy. But you want your normal, everyday life to get better. Be merciful. Let's pray. God, help us act like you. Help us think like you. Help us love like you. Help us forgive like you. We can only do that by knowing you and loving you. So help us love you better. We love you and we thank you. Amen.